Okay, there's your little yes, I'm okay to be recorded. Okay, so here's my illustration. So first what I did was I brought it into Illustrator, obviously. So I would like this to be a much closer crop, essentially, but just for the purpose of in case it doesn't work out a close crop, I'm going to include everything in there because, well, in case we need it, right? At least it's done. Then we can zoom in, zoom out. Next, what I did was adjust my artboard to be the 11 by 17. So that portion's done. Also, when you, depends if you place your photo in here or if you drag and drop your photo like straight into, say, Illustrator. First and foremost, make sure that you're working in CMYK. So if that says RGB, just do a quick check and change your color mode to CMYK. So a few important things. Then I just close cropped it, and there's going to be some business up here that I plan on. So I just cropped it out here, and we're ready to go. So as I've mentioned several times before as well, organizing our layers are, oh crap. Organizing our layers is so important. Okay. Can't figure out how to get this. There we go. So the more you can keep those layers organized, the more you will save your life later. And really, in reality, we had Mark Dodgson. I don't know if you guys probably met him last year. He did a talk this morning and just talking about like file sharing and work sharing, and it just brought back the whole like how important it is to keep our files organized, keep things in order, because it's just going to save our lives later, and it also might save someone else's life later, and they won't put a hex on you or curse you later for having crappy file management. So here I have my photo. Call this photo. I did not do that. So what I can do, I'm so hesitant to say this because I'm scared if I say this, then everyone's going to assume, but really, like, we are not to live trace. It's very, like, we all know how to live trace in Illustrator, right? And then if you expand your object, you get a whole bunch of little dots, and it's like, we can tell. And if we can tell, there's going to be like a zero tolerance. I'm not going to ask for another one because it takes too long and it's just going to be crappy work. Zero tolerance, sadly, it'll be a 0. But it's not to say that you can't go ahead and do a live trace to help guide your shadows. So if you are not an illustrator and if you are unaware of how to do this, or you're frightened to do this, what we can do first, I'm not sure why I have a big red blob under my nose, but anyway, what we can do is do this live trace to again to get the shadows. So I had a close crop on that. So you would select your photo, we do a live trace. I'm not expanding this. If I expand this, obviously, see, I can tell it's going to be really jaggedy, and that's going to be a sheer sign that that damn thing's been live traced. But you can go ahead and open this up a little bit. You color mode, color, crank those colors up so you do get all the shadows you possibly can get, and you can just use that to help you as your guide. As your guide. Strongly utilizing the word as your guide. Look at all my dog's hair got pulled up from there. So this just can kind of help you. So what we're going to do is we will start. I'm not going to go ahead and trace all of this with you because I think you guys all know how to, but actually maybe I'll do a little bit. So we're going to start with our objects, and then you can really start anywhere, but it's probably just easier to start with your larger shapes and almost starting from the back. So if you guys have pens, I have a program called AstroPad where I can use my Apple Pencil on my iPad, but it's working Illustrator. So it's essentially just working as a trackpad with my pencil. So sometimes I use that. To be totally honest, I use Procreate and I illustrate in a kind of a different way. So this is a little bit out of my own comfort zone as well. but you're welcome to just use your pen tool because it truly does work just as well. It's just kind of what you're used to. So if you don't have an Apple Pencil, I wouldn't jump into trying to do one of those bad boys now. So using my pen, I'll just start, say for instance, oh, sorry, second of all, I'm gonna double click on my photo layer that I've called photo. I'm gonna dim my image. You go 50, I think it defaults to 70. I find that a bit light sometimes, so I go about 60 or 70, and then lock that sucker. So we'll start, I'll do a new layer. I'm just gonna call this hat 2. Using my pen, then we just start to draw our shapes. I do sadly see, unfortunately, at this stage of the game, still a lot of practice needed with the pen tool. So we shouldn't be seeing where those little nodes are placed as best as we can. We should be placing those and using our arms as best as we can so we do not get any of those blips and bumps in there. This is a bit dark. So here's another trick. Once we start adding layers, we start to run out of colors. But I'm finding this green preview a bit dark. If you double click, you can change that to something brighter. So I'm just going to change it to magenta so we can see it. Start to draw around. What I do find, even when I'm drawing not with my pen tool, sometimes I do kind of a loosely based version. And then sometimes I go in there afterwards and make it a little more refined. So I'm just going to use a bright red color to start. Now, if we're drawing our hair, we would go below that. So I'm going to add another layer. I'm going to bring it below. I'm going to call this hair. The beauty with that, now I can use this mark. And then I can just kind of loop it around here. Don't be afraid to get right up and close with yourself. So depending on the style of illustration you guys are also doing, I find when you get into like details around, say like the tops of your hair, if you're not wearing a hat, bangs, the bottom of your hair, not getting so literal with them, adding a little bit of jagged edges adds a little bit of realism to it. So, but again, that's all literally totally personal preference. And again, I'm just going to go over some details in case someone is not familiar with Illustrator. So if I'm using my pen tool and say I went a little too far with my curve, if you press, instead of going over to pick up your anchor tool, you could press Option to bring that sucker up. And we're just going to continue tracing. And then again, we're a little bit below here, so we don't need to worry too much about that. My little dog's head. So I'm just going to use this because this is kind of the ending point for my hair. And then since this is going to go behind the hat, I can just kind of go and do that sort of thing. So now we can have a quick look. How is this looking? A nice idea or a nice thing to do is to turn that photo off, because right now you're like, oh, this is all kinds of wrong right now. And then you turn your photo off and it's, oh, actually that kind of works. I'm liking the way the bangs are looking. I might want to add a little bit more detail in here. I don't like this bump too much. This is where you can kind of go a little bit like, say, outside of your photo, but generally we do want to try to keep it as close as possible. And what I would suggest as well, if you are not super experienced with illustration, especially with portraits, following it as best as you can will be key. And at the end, that's where you can kind of go in, you're like, oh, I think I'm just going to adjust the edge of that eye, perhaps. So now we'll go in and we're just going to add a little chin here. So I'm going to call this, but again, working, I think before I said work back to front, we're going the other way around, or kind of the other way. So face. And then again, now we're going up behind the hair, so it doesn't really matter how this portion looks. And I've decided I really want to go a bit nuts with this picture, so I'm going wild with my colors. So again, yep, that chin needs a bit of cleaning up. I'll focus on that later. The face is something I always like to have in there, but I usually turn it off because you can't really have that all in there if you need to get to all your other elements. So I'm not going to go into too much more detail besides starting a little bit of the shadow process. So because I don't want to go ahead and mess around with that, I'm just going to, whoopsies. Here's my hair, here's my face. So I'm just going to put that on the outline. So this is where this sucker is going to come in handy. So this is where you're going to see, okay, so we have some dark shadows and some dark shadows over on this side. They're in and around the same tones. This will also help you if you, because I chose to do different colors, if I want to, pardon me, a more realistic look and feel, this is where you can go and eye drop your skin tones. I do have something to talk about our colors too in a moment. So let's just keep it like that for now. So now I'm just going to go and I'm going to start to break down the face. Almost if you squint, kind of move back, you start to see all those shadows break up into their little sections. So here's kind of where I'm coming from with that. So you can see up in this corner, we have a pretty dark shade, but it kind of follows a little bit of a pattern, and you can see there's a highlight up on the lip. You can see it kind of comes down around here and down around here. And again, this is where you can reference this. You can see it comes up around here. Again, see this isn't always right. This isn't always exactly where you're going to pull them, but it's a good reference point to where you want to pull those little shadows. On this particular one, I've decided to kind of do really distinct shadowing. Oops. Oh, my face, I forgot. I was like, where'd my face go? So here's where I started to draw some shadows in there. And then again, before you get too far, start to draw some distinct shapes in there. So the nose is always a good one to get in there. So at this stage, I just draw a few little nostrils for my nose, and then you're going to turn this on and off so many times. Okay, so it's looking a little bit more real. Turn that face off, or you can outline it however you feel. I had a highlight in here. And then, oh, that was something I wanted to show you. So then I cranked my opacity up a little bit, and I also did a tiny bit of a gradient on this. Personally, for me, my illustrations are usually a little bit more flat. Again, for this purpose of showing you guys, I'm doing a little bit more shadowing and working a little bit with gradients. So the gradients, I personally feel the less extreme the gradients are, a little more realistic. When they start to like be really like gradienty, they start to lose a little bit of realism, but that's perhaps maybe the way I illustrate and the way I'm doing them. Perhaps if you're like a master gradient person, it's going to be bang on for you. So for this instance, where's my color? So I've chosen a Pantone for my face color. And what I did was I brought it down a little bit lighter. It's up to you. You can mix your own colors. You can do anything like that. Again, I'm going to tap into that in a moment. And then this way, when it came to my shadows, it made it a little bit easier to pick up this Pantone and then just bring that darkness up a little bit. And again, it's up to you how much shadow you want, how little shadow you want. It doesn't have to be a Pantone. This is the key. So say, for instance, I want my face to be this funny green color. So if I want my face to be this green color, and I'm like, oh, I'd love it if this was a little bit, let's see, that's